Unit 5, Connected Speech. Remember, you can find many more examples in Chapter 5. I will just give you an overview, an outline. Connected speech. First thing we're going to look at is liaison, linking. Linking sounds. Normally, when we pronounce father and mother, in the word father there is no R sound. In American English, yeah, they say father, but not normally in RP. Well, at least that's been the situation up till quite recently. However, sometimes between vowels, the R appears. It reappears. For example, father and mother can be pronounced father and mother, and it sounds like you're saying rund, father and mother. Now, this is not so surprising because father, which has an R at the end, in Old English, the R was pronounced. In fact, the R disappeared in RP relatively recently, but in Old English and Middle English it was pronounced. So they'd say father, that kind of thing, and mother. So a bit like in Scottish. So many people pronounce it father and mother, father and mother. Conservative people would think, oh, that sounds terrible, but many people, and more people, are starting to pronounce the R when there's a vowel after it. Now let's compare four things with another word. So four things, there's no possibility of this R appearing. Why? Because it's followed by the consonant th. Let's compare this with 4 apples. Just like in father and mother, some people say 4 apples, but other people say 4 apples. So it sounds like you're saying rapples. As I said, there are many more examples in the book. Intrusive R. Now, the pattern, the psychological pattern set up by linking R is so strongly felt that it is commonly extended to other words that end in one of the same vowels, as in the words with R in them, but do not have an R in the spelling, particularly, for example, when words are pronounced with a final schwa, with a final ear, and more recently also R, the Bath vowel, and or, which would be the thought type, because they don't have an R in them. For example, let's compare drama queen. Well, once more, there can be no intrusive R between drama and queen because queen begins with a consonant. It needs to be a word with a vowel. Now let's compare drama queen with drama and music. Now, some people pronounce it drama with no R, drama and music, and other people pronounce it drama and music. But notice there is no R in the spelling of drama because there's never been an R in the spelling of drama. But drama, the M sound, sounds very much like mother and father and words like that that end with ER. So people make a connection between words with R in them and words without R. Let's have a look at another example. Now this is a thought vowel, okay? I saw it. And some people pronounce I saw it. Why? Because or is often found in words with an R in them. For example, more, tor, for. So they make a connection and basically say I saw it. When in the word saw, and in the history of the English language, there's never been an R in that word, saw. But it sounds like words with R that are pronounced or. So how do you avoid liaison? Well, one way is to add a glottal stop. For example, you can say cry out, or you can say cry out, out. Okay, I'm putting a glottal stop, and that will avoid any kind of linking sound. Drama and music, as we saw before. Instead of drama and music, drama and music. For example, if you're very angry with someone, you say to them, out, with a glottal stop. You can say out, or you can say out. So that's heart attack. Repeated consonants, which is also called gemination. For example, between words, pronounce both consonant sounds. For example, there are two d sounds here. Stood down. You say it stood down. You don't say stood down. Big gun. You say big gun. You don't say begun, because it would sound like begin, began, begun, right? Speakers of some languages do this a lot. I don't think Spanish speakers do it at all. Now, when two consonants are identical in all except voicing, do not voice the voiceless sound. For example, cliff village. Do not pronounce it cliv village. Now, once again, I don't think Spanish speakers do this. Teeth that bite, you shouldn't pronounce it teeth. It's teeth that bite, even though that begins with a voiced consonant. Compression. The way words can be pronounced with fewer syllables in fast or casual speech. This happens quite a lot. Now, a vowel is changed into the corresponding approximant. For example, the neutralized sound E turns into Y, and the same with the neutralized U turns into W. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. For example, lenient. Now that's 3 syllables, but you can also pronounce it lenient, which is 2 syllables. Influence or influence. Now, if you speak very quickly, this kind of thing happens. Assimilation. Progressive assimilation. This is when the first sound affects the second sound. For example, when we pronounce ribbon very quickly, we can pronounce it ribbon. Okay, with the b and then a m. For that to happen, we have to get rid of the schwa. Okay, so if you pronounce very quickly, you can say ribbon. And if you pronounce more slowly, you would say ribbon, ribbon. Okay, so that's progressive assimilation. Regressive assimilation is much more common. That is when C2, the second consonant, affects the first one. Let's have a look at an example. For example, bad boys. Okay, we have bad, and then we have boys. We have a d sound followed by a b sound, an alveolar followed by a bilabial. Now, when you pronounce this very quickly, you can actually say bad boys. In fact, no one will notice it. Bad boys. Good girls can become good girls with g-g. Notice that there's no change in voicing here. We have a voice sound, d, becoming another voice sound, b. This is very important. There are several things that can happen in assimilation. Changes in place of articulation. For example, that boy can become that boy. It's a bit like bad boys. But notice that t becomes a p. It doesn't become a b, as in bad boy. So there's no change in voicings. That boy, that boy. Changes in manner of articulation. For example, this happens in very, very quick speech. I don't really recommend this, but you probably hear it. That said, dicho eso, you can say, that said, that's a possibility, but we don't recommend that particular type. Okay, changes in place of articulation like that boy, very recommendable. If you speak very quickly, this will happen naturally. Okay, but number 2, that said would probably be the best way to pronounce it. Changes in voicing. Now, I said there were no changes in voicing. However, this has become part of the language due to the contact between word stems, that means, the word itself like, and the plural morpheme, likes. Okay? How many likes did your comment get, for example, in Facebook? So we have slug, babosa I think it is in Spanish, slugs. Okay? If it ends with a g, which is voiced, the plural will be voiced. With rat, it's rats. Voiceless, voiceless. We've already seen this. This is in chapter 4 in the part on the alveolar fricative. Okay, so you can look at the book for that. In other places, voicing across word boundaries is very rare in English and can lead to a heavy accent. Avoid this completely. So you would say that gun, it should not become that gun. However, you can use the change of place. Okay, as we've seen with bad boys. That gun would work okay. If you're saying, is that gun loaded? Is that gun loaded? That would be perfectly okay. But notice the k comes from a t, and they're both voiceless. There's no voicing there. Voicing is very rare. It only happens in these cases up here, which are historical, okay, which are now part of the language. However, as you know, devoicing is the norm at the beginning and end of syllables. For example, in verve, gaze, and mud, the voice sounds at the beginning and the end of each word are slightly devoiced. They lose voice. They're not as voiced. They're not fully voiced. But between voiced sounds, for example, seizes, this sound here is fully voiced because it's between a fleece vowel and a kit vowel. Okay, but notice that this one, which is at the end before a pause, is devoiced. Coalescent assimilation. When two phonemes become one. This can happen inside a word. Very common example is educate, which is a very careful pronunciation, but most people I think nowadays say educate. Between words, very common, and it's something that you should do. It sounds very natural. Words ending in one of the alveolar stops, the voiceless or the voiced ones, t or d, followed by you or yours, etc., may coalesce with the yod, with the y sound, to make ch, or coalesce with the d to make j. Let's see some examples. Got you. Got you. Very common. Got you. Okay? It can also be pronounced gotcha with a schwa. Did you can become did you. Also did ya. Did you do it? Did you do it? I got you a present. I got you a present. Did you do it? So it's very common in speech. So do not avoid it. It sounds much more natural because you're putting words together. Reduction. Reduction is a case of progressive assimilation. Remember the first sound influencing the next one, which is found in rapid speech. The first consonant in the second word becomes the same as the last consonant sound in the first word. For example, reduction of the in rapid speech after the voiceless alveolar fricative, the to z or s. For example, what's this can become what's this? What's this? Okay? Once again, we don't really recommend this. What's this? What's this? Elision. Elision is extremely important. It's very common. And it should not be avoided. You should do this. The most famous example of elision is H dropping. Some people say hello instead of hello, but that's not really RP. But even RP speakers drop their H's. For example, what's his name? What's his name? No one would even notice if you drop the H there. So that's another advantage of speaking in phrases rather than speaking in separate words. In some final clusters, t and d, these alveolar sounds, may entirely disappear, be elided. This only happens if the next sound is a consonant, okay? This doesn't happen if it's a vowel. For example, no one, I think, says don't go. Everyone says don't go. So don't is a very common word, right? So if there's a consonant following, you normally elide the t sound. Don't go. Don't believe a word he says, for example. Example here, left behind. Left behind would be very careful. Left behind is the norm. Last week, completely normal. Do not try to pronounce the t sound. If you're speaking quickly, if you're speaking slowly, yeah. Change of voicing. Okay, never make voiceless consonant sounds voiced. Okay, this view should never become this view. We've already mentioned that. However, devoicing is common. For example, we have cup of tea, but normally when you pronounce it quickly, it's cup of tea, or even cup of tea. But that's elision, not change of voicing. 5 past will become 5 past. 5 past with an F. Have to go can become have to go. That's very common. In fact, it's very difficult to say have to go. So have to go. So we can see that this devoicing is found in common expressions like this.